The bottle shattered against the bar just inches from Clara Bennett's head. Whiskey and glass sprang across the polished wood as she ducked instinctively, her heart hammering against her ribs in the sudden chaos that had erupted in the Red Canyon Saloon on that sweltering July evening in 1876. Clara had been wiping down glasses when Jake Thornton, a local ranch hand who had been drinking since noon, decided she had slighted him by not refilling his whiskey fast enough. She straightened slowly, her green eyes flashing with a mixture of fear and anger as she faced the swaying drunk across the bar. The saloon had gone quiet, all eyes turning toward the confrontation. Clara was no stranger to difficult customers in her 3 years working at the Red Canyon, but something in Jake's eyes, tonight, spoke of a deeper, more dangerous intoxication. "You think you're too good to serve me, woman?" Jake slurred, his hand reaching for another bottle on the bar. "I'll teach you some manners." Clara's fingers closed around the heavy iron skillet she kept beneath the bar for just such occasions. She had learned early in her time in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, that a woman alone had to be able to defend herself. Her father had died in a mining accident 2 years ago, leaving her orphaned at 21, and she had made her own way ever since. She was not about to let some drunk cowboy intimidate her. "You've had enough, Jake," she said firmly, her voice carrying through the silent room. "Go home and sleep it off." Jake lunged across the bar, his hands grasping for her. Clara brought the skillet up hard, catching him across the forearm with a solid crack that made him howl and stumble backward. But he did not retreat. Instead, his face contorted with rage, and he reached for the gun at his hip. That was when the mountain man moved. Clara had noticed him earlier in the evening when he had entered the saloon. He was hard to miss. Standing well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway, he had the look of a man who lived in the wilderness. His dark hair fell past his collar, thick and slightly wild, and his arms, visible beneath his rolled-up sleeves, were corded with muscle built from years of hard labor and survival. His face was weathered and tanned, with a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of beard, and his eyes were a striking blue-gray that seemed to see everything at once. He had taken a corner table, ordered a single whiskey, and sat quietly observing the room. Clara had thought him just another trapper or prospector passing through Deadwood, perhaps coming down from the Black Hills to resupply. She had not expected him to move with such fluid speed when trouble started. Before Jake's gun cleared the holster, the mountain man was beside Clara, his own Colt .45 drawn and cocked, the barrel pointed steadily at Jake's chest. The click of the hammer being pulled back seemed to echo through the silent saloon. "The lady told you to leave," the mountain man said, his voice deep and calm, with no trace of fear or hesitation. "I suggest you listen." Jake froze, his hand still on his gun, his drunken bravado warring with his survival instinct. The mountain man did not waver, his arm steady as stone, his eyes locked on Jake with the unwavering focus of a predator. Clara could feel the heat radiating from his body as he stood slightly in front of her, placing himself between her and danger. "This ain't your business, stranger," Jake said, but his voice had lost its aggressive edge. "I am making it my business," the mountain man replied. "Now, you can walk out of here on your own feet or I can carry you out. Your choice, but you have about 3 seconds to decide." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Then Jake's hand dropped away from his gun, and he took a stumbling step backward. "This ain't over," he muttered, but he was already moving toward the door. The mountain man did not lower his gun until Jake had pushed through the swinging doors and disappeared into the night. The saloon erupted in a buzz of conversation as the mountain man holstered his weapon and turned to face Clara. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the way his gaze softened when it met hers. He was older than her, she guessed, perhaps in his early 30s, and there was a steadiness about him that made her feel safer than she had in a long time. "You all right, madam?" he asked. Clara realized she was still gripping the skillet so hard her knuckles were white. She set it down carefully and smoothed her hands over her apron, trying to compose herself. "I am," she said, and was pleased that her voice came out steady. "Thank you. That could have gone worse." "You handled yourself well," he said, a hint of approval in his tone. "Not many women would have stood their ground like that." "In Deadwood, you learn to stand your ground or get run over," Clara replied. She studied him more carefully now, taking in the quality of his gun belt, the knife sheathed at his side, the way he carried himself with absolute confidence. "Can I buy you a drink?" It's the least I can do. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I would not say no to that. Clara poured 2 generous measures of the good whiskey, not the rot gut they served to the miners. She came around the bar and gestured to a table away from the main crowd. As they sat down, she realized her hands were trembling slightly with the aftermath of adrenaline. She wrapped them around her glass to steady them. "I am Clara Bennett," she said. "Cade Macklin," he replied and raised his glass to her. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Bennett, though I wish it had been under better circumstances." They drank, and Clara felt the whiskey burn down her throat, warming her from the inside. "Do you make a habit of defending strange barmaids?" she asked, trying to lighten the mood. Cade's expression grew serious. "I make a habit of standing up when I see someone in trouble," he said, "especially when that someone is already doing their best to defend themselves. You cracked him good with that skillet." "My father taught me," Clara said, and felt the familiar pang of loss that always came when she thought of him. "He said a woman on the frontier needed to be able to take care of herself. He was right." "Smart man," Cade said. "You from around here?" Clara shook her head. "Pennsylvania, originally. My father and I came west 4 years ago when gold was discovered in the Black Hills. He was a miner. He died 2 years ago in a cave-in." "I'm sorry," Cade said, and there was genuine compassion in his eyes. "That must have been hard." "It was," Clara admitted. She rarely spoke of her father's death to anyone, but something about Cade's quiet presence made it easier. "But I managed. I got this job, and I have a small room upstairs. It is not much, but it is mine." "There is value in that," Cade said, "making your own way." "And what about you?" Clara asked. "You are clearly not from town. Trapper?" "Among other things," Cade said. "I have a cabin up in the hills, about 2 days' ride from here. I trap in the winter, pan for gold when the streams are running, hunt year-round. I come into town every few months for supplies and to sell pelts." "That sounds like a lonely life," Clara observed. Cade shrugged his broad shoulders. "I like the quiet. The mountains do not talk back, do not lie, do not start trouble. It suits me." "But lonely," Clara pressed. Cade met her eyes and something passed between them, a moment of understanding. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I have been on my own for a long time. You get used to it." "How long?" 8 years, Cade said. "I came west after the war. Did not have much reason to go back east. Figured I would make a new start out here." Clara knew better than to ask which side he had fought on. The war had ended 11 years ago, but its wounds still ran deep. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Cade considered the question, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "I found peace, I suppose, or at least the closest thing to it. The mountains have a way of putting things in perspective." Their conversation was interrupted by Silas Grant, the owner of the Red Canyon Saloon. He was a portly man with a bald head and a perpetual sheen of sweat on his face, but he had always been fair to Clara. "You all right, Clara?" he asked, his eyes darting between her and Cade. "I am fine, Silas," Clara assured him. "Thanks to Mr. Macklin here." Silas extended his hand to Cade. "I appreciate you stepping in, sir. Jake Thornton has been trouble for a while now. I should have cut him off earlier." Cade shook his hand. "No harm done." "Still, your money is no good here tonight," Silas said. "Drinks are on the house. And Clara, why do not you take the rest of the evening off? You have had enough excitement for one night." Clara wanted to protest, but the truth was she was more shaken than she wanted to admit. "Thank you, Silas." As Silas returned to the bar, Clara looked at Cade. "I suppose I should go upstairs," she said, but she found herself reluctant to end their conversation. "Mind if I walk you up?" Cade asked, "just to make sure Thornton is not lurking around." Clara smiled. "I would appreciate that." They finished their drinks, and Clara led Cade through the back of the saloon to the narrow stairs that led to the rooms above. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single lamp at the far end. Clara's room was the third door on the left. She unlocked it and pushed it open, then turned to face Cade. "Thank you again," she said, "for everything." Cade stood in the hallway, his hat in his hands. In the lamplight, his features were softer, more approachable. "You are welcome, Clara," he said, using her first name for the first time. "If Thornton gives you any more trouble, you let me know." "How would I do that?" Clara asked. "You live 2 days away in the mountains." "I will be in town for a few more days," Cade said. "I'm staying at the boarding house on Main Street. After that," he paused, seeming to consider something. "Well, if you need me, you can leave word at the trading post. They know how to reach me. Clara nodded, touched by his concern. I will remember that. Cade settled his hat back on his head. Good night, Clara. Good night, Cade. She watched him walk back down the hallway, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor, and then closed her door. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the main street of Deadwood. She moved to the window and looked down at the bustling town below. Even at this hour, the streets were full of miners, cowboys, gamblers, and all manner of people seeking their fortune. She thought about Cade Macklin and his quiet strength, the way he had stepped in without hesitation. Most men in Deadwood were either trying to get rich quick or looking for trouble. Cade seemed different. There was a calmness about him, a sense that he knew who he was and what he wanted from life. She found herself hoping she would see him again before he returned to his mountain cabin. The next morning, Clara woke to bright sunshine streaming through her window. She dressed quickly in a simple blue calico dress and headed downstairs. The saloon did not open until noon, but there was always work to be done, glasses to wash, floors to sweep, tables to wipe down. She was elbow-deep in sudsy water when she heard the front door open. She looked up to see Cade entering the saloon. He looked even larger in the morning light, his powerful frame outlined against the brightness outside. He had cleaned up since last night, she noticed. His hair was still damp and combed back, and he had trimmed his beard. He wore a clean shirt that stretched across his broad chest, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach at the sight of him. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Clara said, drying her hands on her apron. "What brings you by?" "I wanted to check on you," Cade said. "Make sure you are all right after last night." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest at his concern. "I'm fine," she said, "though I admit I did not sleep as well as usual. I kept expecting Jake to come back." Cade's expression darkened. "Has he caused trouble before?" "Not like that," Clara said. "He gets drunk and mouthy, but he has never gone for his gun. I think something set him off yesterday." "Men like that do not need much setting off," Cade observed. "They are always looking for an excuse. Have you talked to the sheriff?" Clara laughed without humor. "Sheriff Bullock has his hands full with claim jumpers and murderers. He does not have time for a drunk cowboy who got himself disarmed before he could cause real harm." "Maybe," Cade said, "but if Thornton comes back, you need to report it. A man who will draw on a woman once will do it again." "I will," Clara promised, "but honestly, I think you scared him enough that he will stay away." Cade did not look convinced, but he let the subject drop. "Well, I will not keep you from your work. I just wanted to check in." "Wait," Clara said impulsively. "Have you had breakfast?" Cade's expression softened into a smile. "I have not." "There is a cafe down the street that makes the best flapjacks in Deadwood," Clara said. "My treat to thank you properly for last night." Cade hesitated, and for a moment Clara thought he would refuse. Then he nodded. "I would like that." They walked together down the dusty main street of Deadwood. The town was already bustling with activity freight wagons rumbling past, miners heading to their claims, shopkeepers opening their doors for business. The air smelled of wood smoke and horse manure and the promise of another hot summer day. The cafe was a small establishment run by a Chinese couple, the Chens, who had come to Deadwood the previous year. Mrs. Chen greeted Clara warmly and showed them to a table by the window. The flapjacks, when they arrived, were indeed excellent, fluffy and sweet with a pat of butter melting on top. Clara also ordered eggs and bacon, suddenly ravenous. "So tell me more about your life in the mountains," Clara said as they ate. "What is it like up there?" Cade considered the question as he chewed. "Peaceful," he said finally. "My cabin is in a valley near a stream. In the summer the meadows are full of wildflowers. In the winter the snow gets deep enough to bury the windows. I have to dig my way out some mornings." "That sounds beautiful," Clara said wistfully. "And terrifying," Cade chuckled. "It can be both. You learn to respect nature up there. It will kill you if you are not careful, but it also provides everything you need if you know how to look. The streams are full of fish, the forests full of game. I grow what vegetables I can in the short growing season. It is a good life." "But lonely?" Clara said again. Cade met her eyes. "Less so lately," he said quietly. Clara felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. She looked down at her plate, suddenly shy. She had not felt this way about a man since before her father died. There had been men who had shown interest in her, but most of them just saw her as a barmaid, someone to flirt with, or worse. Cade looked at her differently. He looked at her like she mattered. "How long will you be in town?" she asked. "A few more days," Cade said. "I need to stock up on supplies, get my horse reshod. Maybe a week at most." A week. It seemed like no time at all, and yet Clara found herself already planning when she could see him again. "Will you come by the saloon tonight?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I was planning on it," Cade said. "If that is all right with you." "More than all right," Clara said, and was rewarded with one of his rare, genuine smiles. They finished their breakfast, and Cade walked Clara back to the Red Canyon. At the door, he paused. "Thank you for breakfast," he said, "and for the company. It has been a long time since I have had a pleasant conversation over a meal." "Thank you for checking on me," Clara replied. "I will see you tonight?" "You will," Cade promised. Clara spent the rest of the day in a distracted haze, her mind constantly drifting back to Cade. She found herself looking forward to the evening with an anticipation she had not felt in years. When she was not working, she caught herself touching her hair, wondering if she should wear it down instead of pinned up, or if she should change into her better dress. "Get hold of yourself," she scolded internally. "He is just a man." But even as she thought it, she knew it was not true. Cade Macklin was not just any man. There was something special about him, something that called to a part of her she had thought long buried. The saloon opened at noon, and by 2 o'clock it was already crowded with the usual mix of miners and cowboys. Clara worked steadily, serving drinks and dodging wandering hands with practiced ease. She kept one eye on the door, watching for Cade. He arrived just after sundown, when the saloon was at its busiest. Clara saw him enter and felt her heart skip. He found an empty spot at the bar and waited patiently until she could serve him. "Whiskey?" she asked with a smile. "Please," Cade said. "How has your day been?" "Busy," Clara said, pouring his drink. "But good, no trouble." "Glad to hear it," Cade said. He nursed his whiskey slowly, watching the room with the same quiet alertness she had noticed the night before. Clara found his presence comforting as she worked. Several men tried to flirt with her, but a glance at Cade sitting at the bar seemed to discourage them from being too persistent. Around 9 o'clock, during a brief lull, Clara poured herself a glass of water and joined Cade at the end of the bar. "Keeping watch?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Just enjoying the view," Cade said, and the way he looked at her made it clear he did not mean the saloon. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You are a flirt, Mr. Macklin." "I am just honest," Cade replied, "and I thought we were past Mr. Macklin." "Fair enough," Clara said. "Cade." They talked whenever Clara had a free moment, stolen conversations between serving drinks and clearing tables. Cade told her about tracking a mountain lion that had been threatening his cabin last winter, about the time he had found a vein of gold in a stream and had worked it for 3 months, pulling out enough to live comfortably for a year. Clara told him about growing up in Pennsylvania, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about following her father west in search of a better life. "Do you ever regret coming out here?" Cade asked. Clara thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted, "especially after my father died. I thought about going back east, but there was nothing there for me. At least here, I have work and a place to stay. I can take care of myself." "That is important," Cade said, "being able to stand on your own. You sound like you speak from experience." "I do," Cade said. "I learned young that the only person you can really count on is yourself, not because people are bad, but because life is unpredictable. You have to be strong enough to weather it on your own." "That's a hard way to live," Clara observed. "It is," Cade agreed, "but safe." Clara understood what he was not saying, that letting people in meant risking loss, and loss was something Cade had learned to avoid. She wondered what had happened to him to make him so cautious, what wounds he carried that had driven him to seek solitude in the mountains. The evening wore on, and eventually Silas called last round. As the saloon began to empty, Cade stood and settled his tab. "Can I walk you upstairs again?" he asked. "I would like that," Clara said. They climbed the narrow stairs together, and once again Clara found herself reluctant for the evening to end. At her door, she turned to face him. In the dim hallway, Cade seemed even larger, his broad shoulders nearly spanning the width of the corridor. "Thank you for the company tonight," Clara said softly. "The pleasure was mine," Cade replied. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers rough but gentle. The touch sent shivers down Clara's spine. "Clara, He paused, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. "I've not felt this way in a long time. Being around you, talking with you, it makes me remember what it is like to want something more than solitude." Clara's heart was pounding. "I feel it too," she admitted. "I did not expect to, but I do." Cade's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin. "I leave in a week," he said, and there was regret in his voice. "I do not know if it is fair to start something when I have to go." "Maybe we do not have to decide everything right now," Clara said. She covered his hand with hers, holding it against her face. "Maybe we can just see what happens." Cade nodded slowly. "I would like that." He leaned down, and Clara rose on her toes to meet him. Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened as they both gave in to the attraction that had been building between them. Cade's arms came around her, pulling her against his solid chest, and Clara felt safe in a way she had not since her father died. She felt wanted and protected and desired, all at once. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Cade rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "I know," Clara whispered, "but come back tomorrow." "Wild horses could not keep me away," Cade promised. He kissed her once more, soft and sweet, and then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Clara let herself into her room and leaned against the closed door, her fingers touching her lips where she could still feel the ghost of his kiss. She knew she was falling for him, and fast. The sensible part of her brain warned that this was dangerous, that he was leaving soon and she would only get hurt. But her heart did not care about sense. Her heart wanted Cade Macklin. The next few days passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing intimacy. Cade came to the saloon every evening, and they talked whenever Clara could spare the time. He began helping her with the heavier work, moving kegs, fixing a broken chair, replacing a cracked window pane. She appreciated the help, but more than that, she appreciated his presence. Having him near made her feel complete in a way she had never experienced before. They went for a walk one afternoon when Clara had a few hours off. Cade showed her the livery stable where he kept his horse, a magnificent bay gelding named Ranger. The horse nuzzled Cade's pockets looking for treats, and Cade laughed, feeding him an apple he had brought along. "He is beautiful," Clara said, stroking the horse's soft nose. "He is a good animal," Cade said with obvious affection. "Saved my life more than once. Last winter we got caught in a blizzard. I could not see 3 feet in front of my face, but Ranger found his way back to the cabin. I would have frozen to death without him." Clara shuddered at the thought. "The mountains sound dangerous." "They can be," Cade admitted, "but not if you are prepared and respect the land. You learn to read the signs the way the clouds build before a storm, how the animals behave when a hard winter is coming. It becomes second nature after a while." "I would like to see it someday," Clara said. "Your cabin in the valley." Cade looked at her, his blue-gray eyes intense. "I would like to show you," he said. "If you would come." The invitation hung in the air between them, full of implications. If Clara went to his cabin, she would be committing to something more than a few pleasant evenings in town. She would be saying that what was developing between them mattered, that it was worth pursuing. "I would have to ask Silas for time off," she said slowly. "But yes, I would like to come. Very much." Cade's face broke into a smile that transformed his usually serious features. "Then we will make it happen," he said. He pulled her close, right there in the livery stable, and kissed her with a passion that left her breathless. That evening at the saloon, Clara was walking between tables when the door swung open and Jake Thornton walked in. Clara froze, her pulse quickening. Jake looked even worse than he had the other night, unshaven, dirty, his eyes bloodshot and mean. He scanned the room until his gaze landed on Clara, and a nasty smile twisted his face. "There she is," he said loudly. "The bitch who broke my arm." The saloon went quiet. Clara set down the tray she was carrying and straightened her spine, refusing to show fear. "Leave, Jake," she said firmly. "You are not welcome here." "Oh, I will leave," Jake said, weaving toward the bar. "But first, you and me are going to have a little conversation about respect." Silas emerged from the back room, his face red with anger. "Get out, Thornton, now." "Or what?" Jake sneered. "You will have your barmaid hit me with another skillet?" His hand dropped to his gun. "I do not think so." Before Clara could react, Cade appeared at her side. She had not even seen him enter the saloon, but there he was, solid and imposing, placing himself between her and Jake once again. "We had this conversation already," Cade said, his voice low and dangerous. "I thought you understood it, but apparently you need a reminder." Jake's bravado wavered when he saw Cade, but he was drunk enough to be stupid. "This ain't your fight, mountain man." "It is when you threaten Clara," Cade said. "Last time I let you walk away. This time, I'm not feeling so generous." Jake went for his gun. He was fast. Clara had to give him that, but Cade was faster. Before Jake's gun had cleared leather, Cade had crossed the distance between them. His fist connected with Jake's jaw with a crack that made Clara wince. Jake went down hard, his gun skittering across the floor. Cade stood over him, his powerful frame radiating controlled violence. "You have two choices," he said calmly. "You can get up, walk out of here, and never come back, or you can try to get up and fight, and I will make sure you do not walk anywhere for a good long while. What is it going to be?" Jake spat blood and struggled to his feet. For a moment, Clara thought he was going to be foolish enough to throw a punch, but then common sense, or perhaps self-preservation, won out. He stumbled toward the door, pausing to glare back at them. "You will regret this," he snarled at Cade. "Both of you." "I doubt it," Cade said. "Now get out." Jake left, and the normal sounds of the saloon gradually resumed. Cade turned to Clara, his expression softening with concern. "Are you all right?" "I am," Clara said, though her hands were shaking. "Thank you. Again." Cade took her hands in his, steadying them. "This is becoming a habit," he said, trying for lightness, but Clara could see the worry in his eyes. "A good habit," she said, "though I wish it was not necessary." Silas approached them, his face grave. "That is the second time Thornton has made trouble here. I'm going to talk to the sheriff. This has to stop." "It might be a good idea to have a deputy stop by for the next few evenings," Cade suggested. "Men like Thornton do not give up easy, and he has threatened Clara twice now. That is serious." Silas nodded. "I will do that. And Clara, I think you should take a few days off. Let things cool down." Clara wanted to protest, but Cade squeezed her hands. "He is right," he said gently. "Your safety is more important than work." "But I need the money," Clara said. "I can't just not work." "I will still pay you," Silas said. "Consider it a paid holiday. I am not losing my best barmaid over some drunk cowboy." Clara looked between the two men, seeing the genuine concern in both their faces. "All right," she said finally, "but just for a few days." "Good," Cade said. "And you are spending those days with me." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "It is," Cade said firmly. "I'm not leaving you alone when Thornton is making threats. You can stay at my boarding house. The landlady has extra rooms, and she is very respectable. Or you can stay here, and I will sleep in the saloon to keep watch. Either way, I am not letting anything happen to you." The protective note in his voice made Clara's heart swell. "You do not have to do this," she said softly. "Yes, I do," Cade said. "Because I care about you, Clara, more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time, and I will be damned if I let some drunk with a grudge hurt you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. No one had cared for her like this since her father died. She had been so alone, and now here was this strong, solid man who wanted nothing more than to keep her safe. "I care about you too," she said. "So much it scares me." Cade pulled her into his arms, and Clara buried her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, leather and pine, and something uniquely Cade. "Do not be scared," he murmured into her hair. "I have got you." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, while the saloon carried on around them. Finally, Clara pulled back and looked up at him. "What happens after this week?" she asked, voicing the question that had been haunting her. "When you have to go back to your cabin?" Cade's arms tightened around her. "I have been thinking about that," he said. "How would you feel about coming with me? Not permanently, not right away, but for a visit, so you can see the cabin, see how you like it, see if maybe that life could work for you." Clara's heart leaped. "You mean it?" I do, Cade said. I know it is fast and maybe it is crazy, but Clara, I have not felt this way about anyone before. When I think about going back to that cabin alone, it does not feel like peace anymore. It just feels lonely. I want you there with me. I want to show you the wildflowers and teach you to fish and wake up next to you every morning, if you want that too. I do, Clara said without hesitation. I want all of that. Cade kissed her then, deep and thorough, pouring all his feelings into it. When they broke apart, Clara was dizzy with happiness and desire. So we will go? She asked. As soon as it is safe, Cade promised. A few days to make sure Thornton is backed off, and then we will head into the mountains, just you and me. The prospect filled Clara with excitement and a little bit of fear. She had never been into the true wilderness before, but with Cade beside her, she felt like she could do anything. True to his word, Cade barely left Clara's side for the next 3 days. Sheriff Seth Bullock came by the saloon to take their statements about Jake Thornton's threats. He was a serious, intense man who had only been sheriff for a few months, but he had already earned a reputation for being tough, but fair. Thornton has been trouble for a while, Bullock said, making notes in a small book. This gives me cause to run him out of town. I will have my deputies keep an eye out, and if he shows his face again, we will arrest him. Thank you, Sheriff, Clara said. After Bullock left, Cade insisted on checking all the locks on the saloon's doors and windows. He even installed a new bolt on Clara's bedroom door, just to be safe. Clara appreciated his thoroughness, even as she teased him about being overprotective. I spent 8 years in the mountains staying alive by being cautious, Cade told her. I am not about to get careless now. During those 3 days, Clara and Cade spent every moment they could together. They took long walks around Deadwood, Cade pointing out the best trails into the surrounding hills. They had lunch at the little cafe every day, and Mrs. Chen began greeting them with knowing smiles. In the evenings, after the saloon closed, they sat in Clara's room and talked for hours, learning everything about each other. Clara learned that Cade had grown up on a farm in Missouri, the youngest of 4 brothers. He had lied about his age to join the Union Army at 16 and had seen terrible things during the war. When it was over, his parents had died of fever, his brothers had scattered, and Cade had decided to start fresh in the West. He had tried his hand at various things, cowboying, railroad work, prospecting before finally settling in the mountains where the solitude helped quiet the memories of war. I still have nightmares sometimes, he admitted one night, holding Clara close on her narrow bed. They had been careful to remain respectable, though the temptation to go further was strong. About the battles, the men I killed, the friends I lost. In the mountains, it is easier. There is nothing to remind me. You do not have to tell me if it is too hard, Clara said softly, running her fingers through his long hair. I want to tell you, Cade said. I want you to know all of me, even the dark parts. If we are going to do this, if we are going to be together, you should know what you are getting. What I am getting is a good, brave man who has been through hell and came out the other side, Clara said firmly. The war was not your fault, Cade. You did what you had to do. Cade kissed her forehead. You are too good for me. No, Clara said. I am exactly right for you, just like you are exactly right for me. On the 4th day, Sheriff Bullock came by with news. Thornton left town, he said. One of my deputies saw him riding out yesterday afternoon, heading south. Looks like he finally got the message. Clara felt relief wash over her. Thank goodness. I would still be careful for a while, Bullock cautioned. A man like that might double back. But for now, it looks like he is gone. After the sheriff left, Cade turned to Clara with a grin. Looks like we can take that trip, he said. Clara's excitement was tinged with nervousness. I need to ask Silas for time off properly, she said, and I should pack. Take your time, Cade said. We will leave whenever you are ready. Silas was surprisingly understanding when Clara explained where she was going. I had a feeling something like this was coming, he said with a smile. You have that look about you. What look? Clara asked. The look of a woman in love, Silas said. And Macklin seems like a good man, hard-working, protective. You could do a lot worse out here. I am not sure if it is love yet, Clara said, though her heart knew differently. It is so fast. Sometimes that is how it happens, Silas said. My wife and I knew after 2 weeks we were meant to be together, been married 30 years now. When you know, you know. Clara hugged him impulsively. Thank you, Silas, for everything. You take care of yourself up there, Silas said gruffly, and if it does not work out, you always have a job here. Clara packed her few belongings into a carpet bag, a few dresses, her warmest shawl, her mother's silver brush, the only valuable thing she owned. Cade assured her he had supplies at the cabin, so she did not need much. She was ready by the next morning. They left Deadwood at dawn, riding double on Ranger. Clara had never been much of a rider, but Cade was patient, keeping the horse at an easy pace and steadying her when she felt unbalanced. She sat in front of him, his strong arms around her on either side as he held the reins, and she had never felt safer in her life. The trail into the Black Hills was beautiful, winding through pine forests and meadows full of wildflowers. The air was clean and cool, scented with pine and wild mint. They saw deer grazing in the early morning mist and a red-tailed hawk circling overhead. As they climbed higher, the sounds of civilization faded away, replaced by the rush of wind through the trees and the distant call of birds. This is incredible, Clara breathed, taking it all in. It gets better, Cade promised. They rode for most of the day, stopping at midday to rest the horse and eat the lunch Cade had packed: cold chicken, bread, and apples. They sat by a stream, dangling their feet in the cold water, and Clara could not remember the last time she had felt so carefree. Are you all right? Cade asked, watching her with concern. It is a long ride for someone not used to it. I'm fine, Clara assured him, though in truth her backside was getting sore. It is worth it. They camped that night in a small clearing. Cade made a fire and cooked rabbit he had snared along the trail. They ate under a canopy of stars so bright and numerous that Clara could not stop staring at them. In town, you can barely see the stars, she marveled, but out here, you can see forever, Cade finished. He wrapped a blanket around both of them and pulled her close. I missed this, he said, having someone to share it with. Did you have someone before? Clara asked. In the mountains? Cade was quiet for a moment. Once, he said finally. Right after I first came west. Her name was Abigail. She was a farmer's daughter, sweet and kind. We were going to get married. What happened? Clara asked gently. Cholera, Cade said, his voice tight. It swept through the settlement where she lived. She died in 2 days. After that, I could not stay there. Too many memories. That is when I moved deeper into the mountains, built my cabin where no one could find me. I am sorry, Clara said. That must have been terrible. It was, Cade said. For a long time, I did not think I would ever want to be with anyone again. But then I met you, and everything changed. You reminded me that there is more to life than just surviving, that it is worth taking a risk on happiness, even if it scares me. Clara turned in his arms to face him. It scares me too, she admitted, but I would rather be scared and with you than safe and alone. They kissed under the stars, and Clara felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was where she was meant to be, with this man, in this place, building something new together. They reached Cade's cabin late the next afternoon. It sat in a small valley, just as he had described, surrounded by towering pines with a clear stream running nearby. The cabin itself was solidly built from logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch. It was larger than Clara had expected, and well maintained. Cade helped her down from the horse and watched her face anxiously as she took it all in. What do you think? He asked. It is perfect, Clara said honestly. Cade, it is beautiful. His face relaxed into a smile. Come on, I will show you inside. The interior was simple but comfortable. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, and a bed in one corner piled high with furs. A ladder led to a loft where Cade stored supplies. The walls were lined with shelves holding food, tools, and books. It was clear Cade took pride in his home. I know it is not fancy, Cade said, suddenly seeming uncertain. It is wonderful, Clara said. She walked around, taking in all the details: the rifle mounted over the door, the neat stack of firewood, the wildflowers in a jar on the table. Did you pick those? Cade looked embarrassed. I wanted the place to look nice for you. Clara turned and walked into his arms. You are sweet, she said, and I love it, all of it. Cade held her tight. I am glad, he said, because I am hoping you will stay, not just for a visit, but permanently, if you want to. Clara pulled back to look at him. Are you asking me to live with you? I'm asking you to marry me, Cade said. I know it is fast, and I do not have much to offer, except this cabin and my protection. But Clara, I love you. I have loved you since the moment you stood up to Thornton with that skillet in your hand. You are brave and strong and beautiful, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. If you will have me." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you too, Cade. So much." Cade kissed her, lifting her clear off her feet, and Clara laughed through her tears. When he set her down, he was grinning wider than she had ever seen him. "We will have to go back to Deadwood to make it official," he said. "Find a preacher. But as far as I am concerned, you are mine and I am yours from this moment on." "Agreed," Clara said, "though I would not mind making it official sooner rather than later." They spent the rest of the day settling Clara in. Cade gave her a tour of the property, the small garden where he grew vegetables, the smokehouse where he preserved meat, the root cellar stocked with supplies for winter. He showed her how to draw water from the stream, where to find the best berries, and which trails were safe to walk alone. "You will learn all of this in time," he assured her. "Living out here requires different skills than living in town, but I will teach you everything you need to know. We will be a team." That night, they sat on the porch watching the sunset over the mountains, turning the sky brilliant shades of orange and pink. Clara was wrapped in one of Cade's shirts, which was enormous on her, and he had his arm around her shoulders. Are you sure about this?" Cade asked quietly. "About giving up your life in town for this? It is isolated, Clara. The winters are hard. We might go weeks without seeing another person. I do not want you to regret it." Clara turned to him. "The only thing I would regret is not giving us a chance," she said. "I do not need fancy things or a lot of people around me. I need you. And this," she gestured at the mountains around them, "this is more beautiful than anything I have ever seen. As long as we are together, I know I will be happy." Cade kissed her softly. "I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret this choice," he promised. That night, they made love for the first time, slow and tender in the big bed piled with furs. Cade was gentle with Clara, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and loved. Afterward, lying in his arms with the fire crackling softly and the sound of the stream outside, Clara felt peace settle over her. This was home. Not the cabin, not the mountains, but here, in Cade's arms. This was where she belonged. The next few weeks passed in a blissful haze. Cade taught Clara the skills she needed to survive in the wilderness. She learned to fish in the stream, to identify edible plants, to shoot his rifle with reasonable accuracy. She learned to read the weather signs and to bank the fire properly at night. Cade was a patient teacher, never making her feel foolish when she made mistakes. In turn, Clara brought her own skills to their partnership. She was good at preserving food, at sewing and mending, at organizing the cabin to make it more efficient. She started a small herb garden near the cabin, planting mint and sage and thyme that she had brought from Deadwood. She cooked meals that made Cade groan with pleasure, things he had not had since leaving civilization. They fell into an easy rhythm, working together during the day and spending the evenings on the porch or by the fire, talking and laughing and making love. Clara had never been happier. The isolation that had worried her turned out to be a blessing. Here, there were no demands on her time, no drunk cowboys to fend off, no constant noise and chaos, just her and Cade in the mountains. After a month, they rode back to Deadwood to make their marriage official. Preacher Smith, a Methodist minister who held services in the town, married them in a simple ceremony at the church. Silas and Mrs. Chen were their witnesses, and afterward they had a celebratory meal at the cafe. "You look happy," Silas told Clara. "Really happy." "I am," Clara said, unable to stop smiling. She wore her best dress, and Cade had cleaned up, trimming his beard and wearing a new shirt. They made a handsome couple. "Are you coming back to work?" Silas asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I do not think so," Clara said. "My place is with Cade now at the cabin, but thank you, Silas, for everything. You gave me a chance when I needed one, and I will never forget that." Silas waved off her thanks. "You earned your keep and then some. But if things ever change, you know where to find me." They stayed in Deadwood for 3 days, stocking up on supplies they would need for the coming winter: flour, sugar, coffee, ammunition, and fabric for Clara to make new clothes. Cade also bought Clara a wedding gift, a beautiful mare with a gentle temperament. "Now you can ride on your own," he said. "Her name is Belle." Clara threw her arms around him, delighted. "Thank you. She is perfect." On their last night in town, they stayed at the boarding house, in the same room where Cade had stayed when they first met. As they lay in bed, Clara traced patterns on Cade's chest. "Do you think we will have children?" she asked. Cade's hand came up to cover hers. "I hope so," he said. "If you want them." "I do," Clara said. "I want a house full of them. Boys and girls running around the cabin, learning to fish and hunt and be strong like their father." "And smart and brave like their mother," Cade added. He rolled over to face her. "Clara Macklin," he said, testing out her new name. "It suits you." "I think so too," Clara said happily. They returned to the cabin and settled into married life. As summer gave way to fall, they worked hard to prepare for winter. Cade hunted elk and deer, smoking the meat to preserve it. Clara canned vegetables from the garden and gathered berries to make preserves. They cut and stacked firewood until they had enough to last through even the harshest winter. One afternoon in early October, Clara was bending over the vegetable garden when a wave of dizziness hit her. She sat down hard, her head spinning. Cade, who had been chopping wood nearby, dropped his axe and rushed over. "What is wrong?" he asked, his face tight with concern. "I do not know," Clara said. "I just felt dizzy all of a sudden." Then realization dawned, and she looked up at Cade with wonder. "Cade, I think I might be pregnant." Cade's eyes went wide. "Are you sure?" "Not completely," Clara admitted, "but I have missed my monthly courses and I have been feeling queasy in the mornings. It would make sense." A slow smile spread across Cade's face. He picked Clara up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he said. "Clara, we are going to be parents." Clara laughed too, caught up in his excitement. "We are," she said. "Are you happy?" "I am beyond happy," Cade said. He set her down gently, as if she were made of glass. "But you need to take it easy. No more heavy work. I will handle everything." "Cade, I am pregnant, not dying," Clara said with amusement. "I can still work." "I know, but I want to take care of you," Cade insisted. "Both of you." As the weeks passed and Clara's pregnancy became certain, Cade became even more protective. He hovered over her constantly, insisting she rest, bringing her food and water, making sure she was warm enough. Clara found it endearing, even when it was a little overwhelming. The winter was harsh, just as Cade had warned. The snow piled high around the cabin, and there were days when they could not leave the house. But inside, they were warm and well supplied, and Clara found she did not mind the isolation at all. She spent the long winter days sewing baby clothes, reading from Cade's collection of books, and planning for their growing family. Cade carved a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and rubbing it with oil until it gleamed. He hung it near the fire where the baby would be warm. Clara lined it with soft furs and blankets she had sewn. "What if I am not a good mother?" Clara asked one night, her hand resting on her swelling belly. "What if I do not know what to do?" "You will be a wonderful mother," Cade said with absolute certainty. "You are strong and capable and loving. Our child will be lucky to have you." "And you will be a wonderful father," Clara said. "I see how gentle you are with me, how patient. You will be the same with our baby." As winter turned to spring, Clara grew larger and moving became more difficult. Cade refused to leave her alone for more than a few minutes at a time. He turned down a lucrative opportunity to guide a group of prospectors into the mountains because it would have meant leaving Clara for several weeks. "The baby is more important," he said when Clara protested. "You are more important. Nothing matters more than that." In late April, when the snow was melting and the first wildflowers were beginning to bloom, Clara went into labor. It was a long, difficult process that lasted through the night and into the next day. Cade stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with cool water, murmuring encouragement. "You can do this," he kept saying. "You are the strongest woman I know. You can do anything." Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born. He came into the world squalling and red-faced, his tiny fists waving. Cade cut the cord with shaking hands and wrapped the baby in a soft blanket before placing him in Clara's arms. "He is perfect," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her son. He had dark hair like Cade and the promise of his father's strong features. He is beautiful, Cade agreed, his own eyes wet. Just like his mother. They named him Thomas, after Clara's father. Tommy for short. He was a healthy, robust baby with a good pair of lungs. Cade was absolutely besotted with him, spending hours just watching him sleep or holding him against his broad chest while pacing the cabin floor. I never knew I could love someone this much, Cade admitted one night, rocking Tommy gently. I thought I loved you as much as it was possible to love someone, but this is different. Bigger somehow. I know, Clara said, smiling at the sight of her two men together. He has both our hearts completely. As Tommy grew, the cabin became even more full of life and love. He was a happy baby, content to lie in his cradle watching his parents work or to be carried in a sling on Cade's back as he did chores. Clara marveled at how naturally fatherhood came to Cade. He was gentle but playful, protective, but not smothering. He sang to Tommy, told him stories, showed him the mountains and streams and wildlife that surrounded their home. One afternoon when Tommy was about 6 months old, Cade came running to the cabin, his face urgent. Clara immediately tensed, thinking something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked. "There's a bear near the stream," Cade said, grabbing his rifle. "A big one. I need you and Tommy to stay inside with the door barred until I come back." Fear gripped Clara's heart. "Be careful," she said. "Always," Cade promised. He kissed her hard, then kissed Tommy's downy head and headed out. Clara waited anxiously. Tommy clutched to her chest. She heard a gunshot, then another. Long minutes passed before she heard Cade's voice calling that it was safe. She unbarred the door to find him standing on the porch, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "It is gone," he said. "It was a grizzly, a big male. I fired warning shots and it ran off. It should not come back, but I will keep watch for the next few days." Clara sagged with relief. "I was so worried," she admitted. "I know," Cade said, pulling her and Tommy into his arms, "but I will always come back to you, both of you. That is a promise." The years passed peacefully. Tommy grew into a sturdy toddler, then a curious little boy with his father's blue-gray eyes and his mother's smile. Clara and Cade had 2 more children, a daughter they named Sarah, and another son they called Daniel. The cabin rang with the sounds of children's laughter, and Clara could not imagine being happier. Cade built an addition onto the cabin to give them more room. He taught Tommy to fish and track, to read the signs of the forest. Clara taught Sarah to sew and cook, to identify healing herbs and preserve food. Daniel, the baby, toddled between them all, getting into everything and charming everyone with his sweet nature. They made trips to Deadwood a few times a year for supplies and to let the children see other people. Tommy and Sarah were always excited to visit the town, though Clara noticed that they were just as happy to return to the mountains. The isolation that might have been hard for other children seemed natural to them. This was their home, and they loved it. On one such trip to Deadwood, when Tommy was 7, Sarah was 4, and Daniel was 2, they ran into Sheriff Bullock on the street. He looked older, more tired, but he recognized them immediately. "Cade, Clara," he said, shaking their hands. "Good to see you. And these must be your children." "They are," Cade said proudly, introducing each child. "You have done well for yourselves," Bullock observed. "Not many people could make a go of it in the mountains like you have." "We have been blessed," Clara said, watching her children explore the town with wide eyes. "There was something I thought you should know," Bullock said, his expression growing serious. "Jake Thornton is dead. He was shot in a bar fight down in Colorado about 3 years ago." Clara felt a chill despite the warm day. She had not thought about Jake Thornton in years, but the memory of his threat still had the power to unsettle her. "Good riddance," Cade said bluntly. He put his arm around Clara. "He cannot hurt anyone anymore." "That is what I figured you would want to know," Bullock said, "so you would not have to worry about him showing up one day." After the sheriff left, Cade looked down at Clara. "Are you all right?" "I am," Clara said. "It is strange. I was so frightened of him back then, and now he's just gone. A bad memory that has no power anymore." "That is because you are stronger now," Cade said. "We both are. We have built something real together, something good. People like Thornton cannot touch that." Clara squeezed his hand. "You are right," she said. "Let us go find the children. I think Sarah wanted to visit the general store." As the years continued to pass, Clara and Cade's love deepened. They still made love regularly, still held hands on the porch while watching the sunset, still found joy in each other's company. They had weathered illnesses and harsh winters, had celebrated birthdays and milestones, had built a life that was rich in love, if not in material wealth. When Tommy turned 16, he began talking about wanting to explore beyond the mountains. Clara felt the familiar pang of a mother watching her child grow up and prepare to leave. But Cade took it in stride. "It is natural," he told Clara one night after Tommy had gone to bed. "He is young and curious. He wants to see what is out there. I was the same way at his age." "I know," Clara said, "but I will miss him." "So will I," Cade admitted, "but we raised him to be strong and capable. He will be fine, and he will come back. This is his home. It will always be his home." Cade was right. Tommy left for a year, working on a ranch in Wyoming and seeing something of the world. But he came back, bringing with him a young woman named Emily, who he had met and fallen in love with. They were married in Deadwood, and Cade helped Tommy build a cabin a few miles from their own, close enough to help each other, but far enough for privacy. Sarah, meanwhile, showed no desire to leave the mountains. She was content helping her mother and exploring the forests. She eventually married a trapper named James, who Cade approved of, and they built their cabin nearby as well. Daniel, the youngest, was the quiet one. He loved books and learning, and eventually he moved to Deadwood to become a school teacher. But he visited often, and Clara was proud of all three of her children. As Clara and Cade grew older, their hair graying and their movements a bit slower, they found joy in their grandchildren. Tommy and Emily had 3 boys who were constantly underfoot. Sarah and James had twin girls who were the delight of everyone's lives. Even Daniel, settled in town, married a schoolteacher named Margaret and had a son and daughter. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cade and Clara sat on the porch of their cabin, the same cabin where they had built their life together. Their bodies were older, but their love was as strong as ever. "Do you ever regret it?" Cade asked, taking her hand. "Leaving Deadwood to come live in these mountains with me?" Clara looked at him, at the face she had loved for 2 decades, now lined and weathered but still handsome to her. "Not for a single moment," she said honestly. "This has been the best life I could have imagined. You gave me everything I ever wanted." "You gave me everything," Cade countered. "Before you, I was just existing, hiding from the world. You taught me how to live again, how to love. You gave me a family and a purpose. You saved me, Clara." "We saved each other," Clara said. She leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet. "And we built something beautiful together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset over the mountains that had been their home for so long. Grandchildren's laughter drifted up from Tommy's cabin down the hill. The smell of pine filled the air, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. "I love you," Cade said, as he did every day. "I love you too," Clara replied, as she always had. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. Clara and Cade celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. They grew frailer, but remained sharp in mind and spirit. Their children and grandchildren cared for them, just as they had once cared for their children. Cade died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 68, with Clara holding his hand. It was a cold winter night, and he simply slipped away, his expression peaceful. Clara grieved deeply, but took comfort in knowing they had had 40 years together, 40 years of love and partnership in building a family. She lived another 3 years, spending her days surrounded by her children and grandchildren, telling stories of the early days, of how she had met their grandfather when he defended her from a drunk in a saloon, how they had fallen in love so quickly it had scared them both, how they had built a life in these mountains that had lasted and grown beyond anything they could have imagined. Clara died on a spring morning, with wildflowers blooming outside the cabin window and her family gathered around her. Her last words were simple: "Tell Cade I am coming home." They buried her next to Cade on the hill above the cabin, under the tall pines they had both loved. Their children marked the graves with simple wooden crosses, and the family continued to live and thrive in the mountains. The cabin itself stood for generations, a testament to the love story that had begun with a barmaid's courage and a mountain man's protection. Tommy's descendants maintained it, keeping it as it had been when Clara and Cade lived there, a reminder of where it all started. The story of Clara and Cade became family legend, passed down through generations. The tale of how they met, how they fell in love, how they built a life together in the wilderness against all odds. It was a story of courage and love, of finding home in another person, of building something lasting. And in that cabin in the mountains, on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right through the pines, some said you could still feel their presence, the barmaid who refused to back down and the mountain man who stood beside her, forever together in the place they had made their own. Their love story had started with a moment of violence averted, with Clara's courage and Cade's protection, and it had bloomed into something beautiful and lasting. From that first night in the Red Canyon Saloon to their final days surrounded by family, they had proven that love could thrive anywhere, even in the harsh wilderness, as long as two people were willing to stand together and build something worth keeping. The mountains had witnessed their love, had sheltered their family, and had become the lasting legacy of Clara Bennett Macklin and Cade Macklin, the barmaid and the mountain man who had found in each other everything they had been searching for. Their story was complete, their lives well lived, their love eternal. And in the hearts of every descendant who walked those mountain trails or sat on that cabin porch, their presence lingered, a reminder that true love, once found, never truly dies. It simply transforms, becoming part of the land and the legacy, living on in the stories told and the lives built in their memory. The wildflowers that grew on their graves bloomed brighter than any others in the valley, as if fed by the love that had been planted there so many years ago. And when their great-great-grandchildren visited those graves, they felt not sadness but gratitude, for Clara and Cade had given them all a foundation built on love, courage, and partnership that would last through all the generations to come. In the end, theirs was a story of the Wild West, of survival and danger, but more than that, it was a story of love conquering all fear, loneliness, uncertainty, and even death itself. For though their bodies had returned to the earth, their love remained, as permanent and enduring as the mountains they had called home, as infinite and boundless as the sky that stretched above those mountains, reaching forever into eternity. And so the story concluded, not with an ending, but with a continuation in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their legacy, in the cabin that still stood strong and true, in the mountains that remembered their laughter and their love, and in the hearts of all who heard their tale and were reminded that true love, real love, the kind of love that changes everything, is always worth fighting for, worth building a life around, and worth passing down through all the ages to come. Clara and Cade Macklin had lived and loved completely, had raised a family in the wilderness, and had created a legacy that would never fade. Their story had started with a single moment of courage, a barmaid defending herself against a drunk, a mountain man standing beside her with a gun, and from that moment had grown something magnificent, something lasting, something that proved beyond doubt that love, in the end, was the greatest adventure of all.